If you are a G.I. Joe fan, you are probably going to hate this movie because this movie has absolutely nothing to do with the actual character of Snake Eyes. So I'm not going to say that I'm a huge like G.I. Joe expert or fan or anything like that. I'm really not. I watched the two movies that came out in like 2009 and 13. What were they called? Rise of Cobra and Retaliation, I think. And I, for the most part, enjoyed those movies. They were fun, just dumb action movies to me. I didn't really get a whole lot out of them. And, you know, I kind of know bits and pieces about G.I. Joe, but overall, I wouldn't say that I'm like a huge fan of the series, and I'm definitely not like an expert on it whatsoever. But even I could look at this movie and see that it was a garbage movie, that overall it was not that great of a movie in a lot of ways. The writing was not that good. They did not do a good job with Snake Eyes at all. They completely butchered the character of Snake Eyes, and that was pretty clear from the very beginning when we see this weird portrayal of him and kind of him being this like weird asshole who was trying to avenge his father's death and stuff, and he was talking throughout the entire movie. You didn't actually get to see him in the Snake Eyes mask and costume until like the last shot of the movie. And it was super weird. Like, this was a very, very weird way to do the Snake Eyes origin story, and I think that it was poorly executed for the most part. Now, Henry Golding, I think that he's a really good actor, and I think that he did a decent job as Snake Eyes for the most part. For what he was given, he himself wasn't bad, but the character that he was given to play was absolutely awful. Like I said, Snake Eyes was an asshole in this movie, and he wasn't likable. I didn't like Snake Eyes as a character in this movie. He was kind of a dick. Like, he pulled a bunch of weird stuff on the people that trusted him, and they continued to like kind of give him passes for it and second chances and everything else. And he continued to just kind of toe the line of, you know, oh, I'm going to pretend to be like a good guy, and then I'm going to be a bad guy, and I'm going to pretend to be a bad guy, and I'm going to pretend to be a good guy. And it was just super weird, and I didn't like how they did that. And I think that overall, that was really detrimental to this movie, and it really brought down the quality of this movie quite a bit. Because if you have a main character like that, especially when it's not well written, it kind of ruins the movie in a lot of ways, especially when it's supposed to be Snake Eyes, who is supposed to be, from what I remember about the character in the other movies that I saw and everything else, he's supposed to be like a character of honor, right? Like, that's kind of Snake Eyes' thing. He's supposed to be like an honorable dude, and he just wasn't that at all. There was nothing honorable about this guy at all in this movie. Even, you know, so even for moviegoers who are going to go see this movie who have little knowledge about Snake Eyes, I don't think that you're really going to find much enjoyment overall with this movie. It seems like that the people who are watching this movie have been enjoying it so far fairly well, at least from what I've been seeing. But the G.I. Joe fans are hating this movie. They're absolutely hating this movie, and I don't really blame them at all. So, I actually enjoyed the action for the most part in this movie. I think that the action was one of the better parts about this movie. But even then, as far as like, you know, ninja, samurai, you know, kung fu type stuff goes, it was pretty low on the poll for that as well. You know, and I think that this movie was kind of boring in a lot of ways, which I didn't really expect to be one of my complaints about this movie, but it was really boring. There were actually a couple moments where I started to like nod off and fall asleep while watching this movie, just because it was that dull and boring, and I just didn't give a crap what was going on. So that's kind of a bad sign for this movie as well. It just dragged down way too much. Like, they could have easily had cut like 15 to 20 minutes out of this movie, and it would have improved the pacing of this movie so much, because the pacing was awful in this movie. It was all over the place. It was terrible. They kept on just doing a bunch of weird, like, going back and forth in this movie and stuff, and it was just all over the place, and it was bad. It was really bad. The writing was pretty awful for this movie. So Snake Eyes wasn't Snake Eyes until like the last shot of the movie, which was also an awful thing to do. I think that was a poor decision on the creators part. I think that the final act of this movie should have been Snake Eyes as we know Snake Eyes, and not the last shot. I think that was a really bad decision as well. So like I said, even if you aren't a G.I. Joe fan, I don't think that this movie I just don't think this movie's really that great. I think that the protagonist is awful, unfortunately, because it is Snake Eyes. It should be an awesome movie. It should be about a cool guy and a cool character, and it just wasn't. Like I said, and I don't think that I necessarily had a problem with the fact that we saw Snake Eyes before he has his accident or whatever. I think that he like has like a bad accident during a war or something, and that's kind of how he like officially gets the mask and he can't talk and stuff, from what I remember about the lore and stuff. But they didn't show any of that in this movie, and I didn't really have a problem with that. I think that they should have ended this movie, or at least had in the third act of this movie him becoming that way, and that would have been great for this movie, because like I said, he was an asshole throughout this entire movie. But if we saw him towards the end of this movie sacrifice himself and basically have his horrible disfigurement and stuff, where he then needs to wear the mask and he can't talk and stuff, I think that would have been a great character arc and a great character redemption piece for him in this film. But they didn't do any of that. Basically, the movie ends with him still being himself. He doesn't really change much in this movie. He doesn't really grow as a character. He doesn't really have any sort of character arc per se. There wasn't really any of that, and I think that really brought down a lot of the enjoyment and the quality of this movie in a lot of ways, and it kind of made it suck. It just kind of made it suck. So Snake Eyes was awful. They could have definitely gave him a better story, and they should have easily. They could have, for sure. Like I said, they could have done the whole accident thing. They could have shown him actually becoming Snake Eyes, and I think that would have worked. And I wouldn't have had a complaint with him talking towards the beginning of the film. I wouldn't have had a problem with him showing his face towards the first, 2 acts of the film. I wouldn't have had an issue with any of that if they actually showed him becoming Snake Eyes, but they didn't even really show that. He just puts on a helmet at the end, and suddenly he's the Snake Eyes that we know, apparently. So it was kind of awful. It was pretty terrible. I will say that the guy who played Storm Shadow did a really, really good job in this film. He really did, and I think that he was definitely the best part about this movie. Overall, not that great. Henry Golding tried. He tried to bring it in the role, and I think that he did the best he could with what he was given, but the writing was just that bad. So anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. What do you think about Snake Eyes? Have you seen Snake Eyes yet? Are you going to watch it? If you are looking for a movie to watch that's new this weekend, I would definitely recommend Old over Snake Eyes. But let me know what you think in the comments below if you've seen it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will talk to you later.
With my heart still